you should be ready to grade your warm-up. So pencils should be down, grading utensils out. So we're dividing, and again, whenever we see divide, we're going to be using synthetic division. So we need to set up our box. And we put the opposite of the divisor, so that's -1. And then we line up our coefficients down the line. Again, make sure you're not missing any degrees. We start with 3, so we should have a degree of 2, degree of 1, and then a degree of 0. Looks good. So our coefficients are 1, -2, 1, and -5. The first number always comes straight down. And now we multiply, add until the end. 1 times -1 is -1. We now add, should have had -3. Multiply again takes you to a +3. 1 plus 3 becomes a 4. 4 times -1 is -4. So we have a -9. Now we need to write the polynomial function after we've divided. We always start with an exponent 1 less than our original degree. So it's going to be x squared, or 1x squared, which is just x squared, minus 3x, because after x squared would come an x, plus 4, with a remainder of -9 over our x plus 1. So there's your answer to number 1. Going over to number 2. Again, same concept, we're dividing, so we need to set up our box. Our divisor will be the opposite, which since it's a -2 will be a +2. Now I look at my degrees. Start with an x to the 4th, which means I should see an x cubed, an x squared, an x, and a constant. I don't see an x cubed or an x squared, so that means I'm not just going to have 1 0, I'm going to have 2. So I have 1 for the x to the 4th, 0 for placeholders for the next 2, then -2, and then 1. First number always comes straight down. Then we multiply, add. So we multiply 1 times 2, which is 2. 0 plus 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 0 plus 4 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. -2 plus 8 is 6. And 6 times 2 takes us to 12, which gives me 13. So now we start writing this. We had an exponent of 4, which means now we're going to start with an exponent of 3. So it's 1x cubed plus 2x squared plus 4x plus 6 with a remainder of 13 over x minus 2. And there's your 2 answers for warm-up. Here is your homework from last night. Remember, you can pause as needed to check your answers. Same concept is exactly what we were doing on the warm-up with dividing and then looking at what your remainders are. So go through them, check your tables, and that will help you then check to see if your expressions are correct. I did label when you were missing variables and would need to add a placeholder for 0. So check through these and then unpause when you're ready to go on. Here we're going to use synthetic division to solve a problem. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to divide the polynomial. By the factor that's provided. Since they're telling it's a factor, that means our remainder should be 0. And then we're going to factor the quotient or the expression that's left. Factor, remember, is your Santa hat, your headphones. Grouping, that's all of our factoring. It doesn't go away. It's going to show back up quite a few times in this chapter as well. So our example is our polynomial, x cubed plus 7x squared minus 38x minus 240, expresses the volume of a box, and it tells us that the width is x plus 5, and we want to know the dimensions. Well, volume has 3 dimensions: length, width, and height. And they already told us the width is x plus 5. So we need to find the length and the height. So the first thing we're going to do is divide this expression by the width. Since it's a plus 5, that means in the box we put it as a negative 5. And now we bring our coefficients down. We start with an x cubed, so I should see x squared, x, and then a number. So that's in order, so I don't need any placeholders. So 1, 7, negative 38, and negative 240. Now remember, since we already know that this is a factor, that means our end remainder should be 0. And if it's not, something went wrong. So we bring down our first number, and then we go through our multiply and add process. So 1 times negative 5, negative 5. Now we add, we get 2. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10, which takes me to negative 48 when I add. Negative 48 times negative 5, that's going to take us to a positive 240, which is how our remainder is 0. So now we start writing our expression, 1 less degree than the start. So we have 1x squared, or x squared, plus 2x minus 48. And since we have that remainder of 0, we can just ignore it. So now we're going to factor it, since we're down to an x squared, in order to find the length and the width. So Santa hat, we're going to multiply the 1x squared and then negative 48. So we're looking for factors of negative 48, and they have to add up to that middle term, which is 2. So think about your factors for negative 48. Since it's a negative, 1 has to be positive, 1 has to be negative, and it should be negative 6 times 8. That would also add to a positive 2. So now the question is this the short or the longer way of factoring? This one you can make short because our a value is 1. So I can go directly to the 2 parentheses. X squared becomes x and x, and I can put in my 2 factors of negative 6 and positive 8. So there's my length and my height. And no, it really doesn't matter what you put where. So when we would write this, we would write it as 3 parentheses being multiplied to each other. So x minus 6, x plus 5, and remember we got that from the beginning because it told us, and x plus 8. It doesn't matter which order you were to put the parentheses in, so you could rearrange them if you put them in a different order. Our last problem in 3-3 is what we call evaluating a polynomial. Well, when you divide the polynomial by the number you are looking for, the remainder is your answer. So instead of plugging in for x every time, we synthetically divide by that number, and the remainder gives us what we would normally get if we had put in the number for every single x. So if we look at the first one, it says that we're looking for what p of 3 is. Now, this doesn't say the divisor, so we don't make this number the opposite. So this becomes just a 3, stays the same. Everything else is the exact same as synthetic division. So I look and I have an x to the 5th to start, which means I should see an x to the 4th. I don't, so I know I'm going to need a holder, placeholder. So I'm missing x to the 4th. I have an x cubed. I have an x squared. But in between the x squared and the 2, I should see an x. So I'm missing an x to the 4th and an x. So I don't need just one placeholder. I'm going to need 2. So we have 1, 0, -8, -1, 0 for that x, and then 2. So again, we bring the first number down, which is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. We add 0 plus 3 is 3. Then I multiply. 3 times 3, 9. Add again, gives us 1. 1 times 3 is 3. -1 plus 3 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. Since we had an exponent of 5, this one takes a little bit of time. 0 plus 6 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18, which add gives us 20. This would be where we would find the remainder. So if I had instead plugged 3 in for every single x, I would have gotten an answer of 20. So P of 3 is equal to 20. We've done synthetic division a lot, so we're going to go ahead and let you try the next 2 problems. Check with your neighbor as you're doing them if you need help, or compare your answers to them. And then when the class has answers for both of these problems, unpause to check the answers. Remember, with evaluating polynomials, we do not change the number this time. We only change it if it's in a divide by with an expression. So we're going to keep the -2. We were not missing any degrees, so 1, 4, -8, -6. You should have brought your 1 down, and then your table should end up looking like this. Which meant you had a remainder of 18. If you got that answer correct, great. If not, look at how your chart compares to mine, or again, confer with a neighbor if you need to help figure out where that mistake went to. The next you try, you were putting in a 4. We were missing an x cubed. So we would have had 1 placeholder here. So we're going to have 3, 0, 1, -4, and 1. Bring the first number down, and here's what your chart should look like. Guess I should have given myself a little bit more room on this chart here. So our remainder was 769, which means if I had put in 4 for every single x and then evaluated it using the order of operations, my answer would have been 769. If you got both of them correct, great job. If not, confer with a neighbor so they can help you find your mistake if you didn't find it while I was going through the problem. If there's time left in class, you could go ahead and start working on your homework. so that you have less to do tonight.